Hello, welcome to For the Young at Heart. My name is Lucille Jerome, and this program is sponsored by Duval Life and Wellness Community. On today's program, we're going to be talking about driving safety during the winter. And my guest is Mr. John Paul from AAA. Welcome, John. Thank you so much for
having
coming.
me.
Oh, I'm so excited about this. And it'll be shown during the winter also.
Oh, good, because I'm not really good at predicting the future, but I can almost predict that we're going to have snow.
We'll have some snow?
We'll have some snow.
Okay. Can we get that in writing?
I'm sure we'll have some snow.
Okay, okay. There are so many particular issues with regard to driving during the winter. And I did actually hear something not too long ago about they're expecting a tsunami of older drivers because of the baby boomers coming along.
Well, the good news is we're all getting older, as opposed to the alternative of not getting older. So, right. Yeah, absolutely right. People from the baby boomer generation, there's a huge number turning 65 and older every single day. And that's the really good news. But the bad news is that, as an example, from the time you're 20 years old to the time you're just 40 years old, you need almost 50% more light to see. By the time you're 60 years old, you probably need another third again as much light to see. So driving at night becomes more difficult.
Right.
Reacting to glare becomes more difficult. Brighter lights and things like that can become harder for people to see. And typically our vision peaks when we're teenagers, when we're 17 or 18 years old. And it's all downhill after that, unfortunately. So, so we look at our vision and we look at things that can affect our driving. And the other thing that happens too, and it doesn't just happen to older folks, it happens to a lot of different people, is nearly 250,000 people per day fall asleep while they drive.
Say that one again.
250,000 people a day fall asleep while they drive.
How is that possible?
It could only be for a split second, just a nod off for a split second, or it could be for several minutes. What happens is, in that split second, if you're driving out on the highway, you're driving out on out on 128, or you're driving out on 95 or 495, at 60 miles an hour, your car's traveling almost 90 feet a second. So if you're tired, maybe you've taken some cold medication, something that makes you a little bit extra tired, maybe you just haven't slept well, and you're driving along, and all of a sudden you just close your eyes for just a second, you just fell asleep for a second, you traveled 90 feet. That's a huge amount of time. You do that for 3 seconds, it's almost the length of a football field. So that's a long time not to be paying attention and to be kind of asleep at the wheel. And those are things that, again, that can happen to younger drivers. Anyone, really? But it's also as likely, if not more likely, to happen to older drivers because of things like medication.
So during the winter, that's even more dangerous.
It can be even more dangerous because you might be driving at night, the days are shorter, there might be glare issues, the sun is lower in the horizon, which the bright lights sometimes can make people feel a little tired. Maybe just being busier for whatever the reason is can make people tired. So there's a lot of things that as we age can affect the way we drive, but what we feel at AAA is that we want you to drive safer longer. So we really want to look at the whole idea of what can you do about it? Well, first off, if you're planning a long trip somewhere, don't leave at midnight, because your body wants to sleep at midnight. Don't get up in the middle of the night and decide you're going to drive to Florida. It's just not a good idea.
And people do drive to Florida
absolutely
during the winter, the snowbirds.
Absolutely. So, but pick the right time to do it. Take a break when you're behind the wheel every couple hours. Get out and stretch a little bit. Get some fresh air. Sitting in your car can really make you tired and sleepy. And then you add in the effects of winter: slippery roads, poor visibility, dangerous intersections, things like that. Winter driving becomes more hazardous. It becomes more hazardous for teenagers. It becomes more hazardous for older drivers as well. So you need to be a little bit careful, and you just need to know there's some simple tips about winter driving that can make it relatively easy. You shouldn't be afraid to drive in the wintertime. Okay. You should just respect the winter weather when it comes.
So let's look at some of those tips.
Okay.
Let's look at some of those tips.
First thing is, if you're driving in the snow, slow down. Too many people drive too fast in the wintertime. The roads, it could take, on a snowy day, it could take your car 50% longer to come to a stop because of the snow on the road. And don't be fooled by things like sport utility vehicles and all-wheel drive cars and things like that. Those vehicles are great to get you up the hill. Coming down a slippery hill, they act all the same. So you need to make sure you leave yourself plenty of distance between you and the cars around you. And watch your speed. Make sure you slow down and keep plenty of distance between you and the cars around you.
When you say plenty of distance, the normal, during summer months, we keep a certain amount. During the winter months, would you double that?
I would easily double that. A lot of people, when they learn how to drive, learn that they should leave 1 car length for every 10 miles an hour worth of driving. We've changed that a little bit because, first off, how big is a car? Is it, you know, a smart car? Is it a Cadillac? Is it something in between? Sure. And what we try to tell people now is figure distances in seconds. So if you're driving down the road and there's a car in front of you and it goes by a stop sign or a telephone pole, it should take you about 3 seconds to get to that same distance. So we want to tell people on a good day to leave 3 seconds of following distance. On a bad day, leave another second. Maybe it's nighttime, leave another second on top of that. So you might want to leave 5 or 6 seconds of following distance between you and the car in front of you. And the other thing is, because you're leaving more following distance, and this is another thing that happens kind of normally with age, is people's eyes tend to settle down. They tend to look more directly in front of them than having their eyes up and looking down the road. And the further you look down the road, the more likely you can react to traffic as it happens. If you're looking at right in front of the hood of your car, by the time something happens, you're not going to be able to react to it. If you have your eyes up and you're looking down the road and something happens, you're going to be able to react to that, to whatever happened.
Okay, so staying with vision for just a moment, then, it's very important for people to make sure they have visited their ophthalmologist or the optometrist.
Absolutely.
Keep their vision.
Absolutely, and do it, you know, we like to see people do it at least every year, but never more than every other year. And don't be surprised about things like cataracts. We're seeing people have cataract issues in their 50s for whatever reason. I mean, it's something we never heard of before. Sure. We're seeing people with cataracts in their 50s, and I know of 2 people that prior to cataract surgery, and they were probably 55 or so, were legally blind. They couldn't even drive their car anymore. They chose not to because they didn't feel safe. They went and had cataract surgery, and they're back to having the vision they did, you know, 20 years previous. So there's some things that you just need to be aware of, and you're absolutely right. Visit your eye doctor, visit your ophthalmologist, and have your eyes checked. And also, even your design of your glasses. Sometimes fashionable glasses aren't the best glasses to see with sometimes. So, because something with a wide piece along the side might hamper some side visibility. Glasses that are small might not give you the same benefit against glare that larger glasses may. So you need to talk to your eye doctor, talk to your optician, and get the glasses that not only make you look young and attractive or whatever you want to look, but you also want to get the ones that are going to do the best job when you're driving. So you know, be aware of that. Sometimes people will go to glasses that have a non-reflective coating on them to try to cut down on some of the glare. I wouldn't recommend going to a tinted glass for driving, especially at night, because it's like driving with sunglasses on, so you don't want to do that.
Okay, that's an important piece of information. Shorter days.
Shorter days, but during the daytime, when that sun is low in the horizon, we think about summertime and the sun being bright, but in the wintertime, the sun is very low on the horizon. It tends to come right in your windshield. And during the daytime, you want to have your sunglasses with you to help against that glare and the bright light. So just some things that, when it comes to wintertime, making sure that you leave that safe following distance, you watch your speed and reduce your speed accordingly. People always hear the traffic reports, the Mass Pike, the speed limit's down to 40 miles an hour. Well, it's down to 40 miles an hour because it's slippery out. Also, intersections tend to be the most slippery too. When you come to an intersection, there's nothing more slippery than ice or packed down snow with water on top of it. And at an intersection with cars running and trucks running, it tends to melt the snow or the ice. So now you have water on top of ice or snow, and that becomes very slippery. So if you're coming to an intersection, you want to start slowing down ahead of time to make sure that you're going to come to a full stop at that intersection and not slide through it. So if you're aware of that, that's going to help a lot. And driving with your headlights on, in the law in Massachusetts says you should put your headlights on in any time of inclement weather. Other states make it a little simpler, and they say headlights on with windshield wipers. But anytime visibility is reduced, whether it's reduced because of snow or rain, you should have your headlights on in your car. A lot of cars do it automatically, but you should have your headlights on in your car. So not that necessarily you can see, but so people can see you. That's important too. So you want to see and be seen. And the other thing is with winter and snow, and a lot of people do this, they never fully clean off their cars. So
yes.
You've probably seen people with, a foot of snow on the roof of their car.
It blows off onto you.
It blows off onto you
car.
And me.
Right.
The other thing that can happen too, which is also quite dangerous, why they might not clean that snow off the roof of their car because it's frozen to the top of the car. Well, they're going for a good long drive. The heat from the car heats up the roof. The snow starts to melt, and like you say, sometimes it blows backwards. Other times they'll come to a stop, it'll slide forward, down over the windshield, then they can't see. And then they'll turn on their windshield wipers, hoping to clear the windshield. And if they're lucky, they clean the windshield. If they're unlucky, it burns out the windshield wipers, which could be a $400, $500, $600 repair. So all because of being a little lazy. So we tell people, in the wintertime, a few little basic things. Make sure you have a good long-handled snow brush in your car so you can fully sweep off your car. I have a broom that I only use just for cleaning my car off. It doesn't have any other purpose. It's just to push the snow off my car.
It's a broom.
It's a broom. You can also get something at an auto parts store. It looks like a broom handle with a piece of styrofoam stuck to the end of it. And you actually just like dip it into the snow and drag the snow off your car. So you can do a good job. A good long-handled snow brush with an ice scraper on the end of it so you can scrape the windshield. It happens at work all the time. We come out at work at the end of the day and we see people trying to scrape the frost off their windshield with their driver's license or a credit card because they forgot to put their snow brush or ice scraper in the car. Spray de-icer if you can melt the ice a little bit quicker. Even the windshield wipers on your car, there are windshield wiper blades made for winter weather. And what they do is they prevent ice and snow from building up in the framework of the windshield wiper.
Okay.
So you see people sometimes, they have the windshield wipers on and they have the window down and they're trying to smack the edge of the windshield wiper to break the snow off of it. These style windshield wipers don't do that. They tend to push the snow and ice away, so they do a better job cleaning the window, but they also don't build up with ice and snow. So making sure your car is ready that way, and also your car could break down. So if it does break down, you want to make sure you have winter shoes in the car or winter coat. Too often we leave the house, we jump into the car with the idea we're just going to run down to the store to pick something up. And if the car breaks down and we have to walk home or we need to walk to a place of safety and we're doing it in shoes that were never meant to be out in a snowstorm or a light jacket, that's not good either. People who are old enough remember the blizzard of '78 where people were stuck in their cars for days. Well, you don't want to be stuck in your car for days with the wrong clothes on.
But should you also maybe have like an emergency first aid kit? Or maybe a little blanket of some type? An
emergency first aid kit, you can go to a camping supply store and buy one of those, I call them space blankets because they look like they're made out of aluminum foil. It looks like something the astronauts used. But you can wrap them around you, that will keep warm. Even if you are stuck for that long a period of time, even if you had the newspaper with you, something you could wrap around to keep warm. Extra medication, a little bit of medication if you're a diabetic or somebody who needs to take medication a couple times a day, have a little bit of that medication in the car just in case if you're stuck for a period of time. And if you're somebody who needs to eat for the same reasons, if you're a diabetic or something else, have an energy bar or one of some granola bar or something like that. Something that you can eat just in case you're having some sort of reaction to your medication. Water's a little tricky because it's going to freeze in really cold weather, but still you can still have it with you at the same time. So a little kit, basically a duffel bag full of a snow brush and some flares and a flashlight and some gloves and medication and a snack and some water. Always a good idea to have with you.
Okay, so those are some hints, and I'm thinking that you mentioned the glare. I'm thinking during the winter when it's snowing, sometimes if you're in a shady, you're driving along, minding your own business, doing okay, but then you hit a shady spot, and maybe it's melted a little bit over there versus somewhere else, or maybe it's still frozen over there versus someone else. You have to be alert.
You absolutely have to be alert. And also, what you described is the perfect example to where black ice happens. Black ice is a very thin layer of water that will freeze on the pavement. And it usually happens overnight. So the roadways get a little bit wet and the temperature drops overnight. It's a little shady area under a tree or around a corner. Next thing you know, you're going around that corner and you're slipping and sliding. If you see a shady area like that and it's rained or snowed the night before, you need to be careful in those spots because there can be black ice, this very thin layer of glare ice. And we hear it from, everywhere from north of the city all the way to Cape Cod, that it's the same thing, and you'll hear about a crash that involved 2 or 3 cars that went off the road because of this one section where it was a beautiful morning and all of a sudden this one shady section, it's icy and slippery, and you have to be careful for that. So just being aware, and again, you don't have to be afraid to drive in the wintertime. You just need to be, you just need to respect the winter weather as it happens. It should always look like, winter should always look like a picture postcard of, snow and the fireplace burning, and unfortunately it doesn't always look like that. So, but you still have to be careful. And then with your car itself, make sure that if your car needs snow tires, put them on. If the battery is 4 or 5 years old, it might be time for a new one. Make sure that the engine coolant, the antifreeze, is in good shape so you won't have any freezing problems, but also make sure that your heat in your car works okay as well. So making sure that your car is mechanically sound. October, November is a perfect time of year to think about doing that wintertime maintenance. And we talk about year-round maintenance, but as we go into wintertime, you want to make sure the oil is changed, the tires are in good condition. Again, if you're going to think about snow tires, this would be the time to start to think about them before the first snowstorm. Snow tires are like specialized shoes. If you think about, you wouldn't play golf in the same shoes that people play basketball in. So if you're somebody who has to be out first thing in the morning, and you have to be out on the roads when maybe they're not in the best condition, that's when you want to think about snow tires for your car. So there's...
Oh, yes, snow tires. But isn't there something called all-weather tires or all-season tires?
The problem is they're less all-weather than they used to be. There was a time where all-weather tires satisfied probably 70% of the winter driving that we do. And I heard somebody say something, it sounded good, so I keep saying it, is all-weather tires will handle 70% of the winter driving up to about 6 inches of snow. More than that, you really need to think about snow tires. The reality is, I think all-weather tires are probably less about winter now and more about the other 3 seasons that we see.
When did that change? How did that come about?
I think as tire technology's changed and have tried to go to longer lasting tires, I don't think they do quite as well in the wintertime as they used to. But people with front wheel drive cars, they still perform pretty well in the wintertime. But if you're somebody who, again, if you're somebody who needs to be out in the wintertime, or you're somebody who you're the person who drives the snowplow, so you have to get out when the weather's bad, snow tires are a good idea. If you want that extra security, snow tires are a good idea. It's going to give you that much more. And it's not really your brakes that stop you in the wintertime, it's your tires that stop you in the wintertime. So as good as your brakes can be, if you have worn or bald tires, the car's not going to stop the way it should.
I'm just wondering now about some of our senior citizens that are still driving, still capable of driving.
Oh, sure.
But I'm thinking that perhaps they might not have the dexterity to get the snow off, so hopefully they're going to have someone do that for them if they don't have a garage. All right, I'm thinking that's one thing to be careful of. There's something else that you just said too. Some people, if they've got arthritis during the winter, it's more difficult for them to maneuver as easily as during the summer. So that's another possibility to maybe have someone help them out, right?
It's always a good idea. And the other thing is too, when the weather gets bad, that might be the time you opt to change your appointment. You know, a lot of times what happens is the weather gets bad, it's just the day you have that doctor's appointment, or just the day you have that dentist appointment or hairdresser's appointment, or whatever the case is, and you're like, I have to get out and I have to. Well, you don't really have to.
You don't really have to.
Or you should consider maybe taking a cab or some other form of public transportation. Very often we hear from people that that have a car, and they've had a car for a long time, and they don't really drive it much anymore. They might only drive a couple thousand miles a year, but they still need to get their car fixed. They still need to have their car insured. They still need to put gas in it. And at the end of the day, it might actually be cheaper to get rid of the car completely and take a cab wherever you want to go. I was talking to somebody who lived just outside of Boston. I think they lived in Somerville maybe. And they said they looked at their overall costs of keeping their car, and it cost them about $3,500 a year is what they figured with insurance and maintenance and gas. Okay. And they said they're able to take a cab every place they want to go for about $500 less than that every year. So for $3,000, they have somebody that picks them up at their front door, brings them to the front door of wherever they're going to go, and brings them back home again. And they said it's safer. Mm-hmm. They can go out whenever they want. Mm-hmm. They don't have to worry about it getting dark. And again, our vision's not as good when we're 60 as when we're 20.
Right. So
we need 3 times as much light to see when we're 60. Right. So you just look at that, and people don't realize how much more light they see. I catch myself all the time now. I'll be opening the mail and I walk over to the front door to get the natural light because and I've lived in the same house for 30 years, and the light bulbs haven't changed. It's me. So you just have to be aware of those things.
Okay. I'm thinking you said something very important there for most people who think by giving up the car, they're giving up freedom. Just having the car there means they can come and go, even if they're 70, even if they're 80.
Oh, sure, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's not an age thing. That's a personal feeling of I'm free by having that car.
Absolutely, but it also doesn't mean that you can't get a ride where you to go. Right. And that's the important thing. My mother's 89 years old. She still drives. She still lives by herself. She's having a little bit of problem these days. And it's a point where her driving might be the best thing around. But does that mean she has to stop going out to lunch once in a while? No, absolutely not. It just means that she might need to make a phone call to go to lunch. And again, look at your costs. Look at what it's going to cost to keep your car. Right. And even if you're bothered by driving at night, there's a lot of things you can do during the day. And again, don't be stuck on the idea that if the weather's bad, I have to go out. Most people expect that when the weather gets bad, they're going to get cancellations for something. And nobody wants you to take a chance to come out in bad weather and get into a car crash, all because you had a doctor's appointment that's there to try to keep you healthy. So,
I like that idea that people really can change their appointments. They can reschedule. They don't have to leave for Florida on Thursday morning during the blizzard. They can wait till Friday or the next. The next Monday or something like that. But senior citizens, most of us have been very organized.
Well, absolutely.
If this is, then you got to do it.
Absolutely.
All right. So it's being flexible, being adaptable, and a silly thing like maybe turning on the radio or watching the TV news broadcast to see what the weather is like before you'd go out. Because it might look fine right then and there. Right. But there might be something coming.
Absolutely, and so many folks are on the internet these days, and it used to be that the internet was a young person's thing, and not at all anymore. And just the idea of going to get the weather, and even if you are somebody who drives to Florida or something like that, look at the weather on the trip and see whether I'm going, by the time I get to Virginia, there's going to be a big storm or something like, plan your route accordingly so you can adapt for that. And there's so much information out there, but none of the information takes away from common sense. And use some common sense to determine whether you want to go out, whether you want to do whatever you want to do. A lot of times, like you said, people are very organized, and they have their day they're going to do things, and just the idea sometimes they're going to change it causes some little issues. Well, it doesn't have to. You can have some flexibility and be able to do some things and keep moving along and be safe. And that's what we want to be.
Better safe than sorry.
We want to be as safe as we can on the road. So, you know, kind of at the very beginning, we're talking, you know, what can you do? You know, make sure your car's in good mechanical shape. Make sure you're in as good a physical shape as you can be. You know, to the point where sometimes you talk to people and they have a neck problem, they can't turn their head. Well, they're not going to be able to look for cars coming up beside them. So sometimes a little physical therapy or yoga classes or something can do a world of good to regain some flexibility in your head and shoulders so you can see better. Making sure your mirrors are adjusted properly, making sure your lights are on, making sure you wear your seatbelt. It's the law in Massachusetts to wear your seatbelt. Not all people do it. And when we look at drivers in general, the most dangerous drivers on the road are young males between 16 and 25 or so. They're showing off. But they don't have something that older drivers have, and that's experience. And it's that experience that makes older drivers better drivers. The problem is drivers become very good between the time they're 30 and say 65 or 70. Then around 70, the accident rates, crash rates start to go up a little bit. And by the time they're 80, they're not driving as much, but their chance of getting into a fatal collision, actually their numbers start to approach what the teenagers do, because your body just gets a little more fragile. So if you're aware of that and looking at how you drive your car, where you go, the speed you drive at, there are times where you may need to give up driving, and that's okay.
That's okay at a certain time.
Yep.
And another option is you don't go alone. Maybe you invite a friend, or you have someone else drive you if you need to get something on that day.
That's absolutely it. And and the problem is you want to make sure they're at least a better driver than you are, which sometimes sounds kind of funny, but it isn't. I was talking to a group of folks one time, and there was this woman, and she was with 3 other women. I saw them all get out of the car together, and I said to one of them, you know, how was the drive? And she said, oh, we have to stop driving now because the woman we're with, she said, went through a stop sign on the way here.
Do you have any websites for us? We're going to be winding down shortly.
Oh, okay.
Do you have any websites that you can mention?
There's the easiest one to get to is AAA.com, just AAA.com. If you've never been there before, it'll ask you for your zip code, so it gets you to the right place. You put your zip code in, and then go to the Public Affairs Department, and you'll see a whole group of things that will cover safe driving, defensive driving, evaluations. You can do an online evaluation to see how good you're doing physically. So there's a lot of different things. 99.5% of it is free. There's only one piece that has a fee attached to it, and so a lot of great information.
Thank you so much for coming. We've covered a lot of information here. So thank you, John, for coming today, and thank you for watching. Safe driving during this winter.